Hey everyone, it's Jim
and Charles
from Melatonin Amps, and in this episode we're going to go over most of the schematics. We're not going to do the power supply in this episode. We'll do that when we do the transformer prep. So at the very beginning, when your signal arrives on the preamp, you've got 3 double pole, double throw switches. And to draw it all out, it looks pretty complicated, but in its essence, when the 3 switches are ganged and they're toggled over to XLR, the XLR inputs, so there's 4 channels of input for the left and right combined, right? Every channel has 2. It has an inverted and a non-inverted signal. That's how we get 4 channels for 2 inputs. So when the XLR is engaged, the RCA inputs are disengaged. And when the RCA inputs are engaged, the XLR inputs are disengaged. And in the center, you have a détente. So nothing's connected. So, okay, that's enough of that. Now, the only thing outside of a 4-channel preamp that's a little different is the RCA unbalanced input circuit. And that is simply one tube. That's V3. That's the tube that's in the middle. It's a twin triode. It's the 6N1P. And we're using 1/2 of the 6N1P for the right channel and 1/2 for the left channel.
And all that's doing is it's splitting the phase and giving us an inverted and an uninverted phase that is coming out to the same place where our balanced inputs are going to.
So let's just follow this through and see how that works. So we're doing just one channel here. The other channel is identical. We have our RCA in. Here's that switch that we were talking about. It's 1/2 of one of the 3 switches. We have a coupling capacitor that has got a bypass option on it. Coupling capacitors just make sure that if there's something bad happening on the equipment that's feeding the preamp input, that let's say there's a dead short and we've got high voltage coming this way, probably DC, that it can't get onto the grid of the tube and blow up our tube. Well, they don't physically, you have to do a lot of really bad things before a tube physically blows up, but internally, electronically, we blow it up, basically.
Mm-hmm. And same in the reverse, too. If there's ever an issue with this tube, you don't want it to damage anything back upstream.
That's right, because electricity will follow the path of least resistance. It doesn't really care if this is supposed to be the forward direction. It'll go the other way just as easily. Okay, so we've got a 470K 1 watt to ground, and that does 2 things. It's a dual purpose component, and a lot of electrical components are like that. So that gives us a load on the input of 470K ohm, which is lovely. And it also makes sure that any DC that builds up on the grid here can actually find a path to ground and not accumulate, because there are stray electrons that are always wandering around inside a vacuum tube, and if they build up, they'll change the bias or the operating point of the tube, and they could shut it off and you wouldn't have a clue as to why. So you can't put too high a value here or you won't drain off your DC, and you can't put too low a value or you won't have a proper load on the input. So 470K is a good compromise. We have a grid stopper, that's 220R 1 watt. That just basically makes sure that if there's any electronic noise anywhere in the air or inside the circuit area, that it can't easily get onto the grid. And sticking this 220R really close, you'll notice if you look at your PCB build, you'll notice that the grid stoppers are as close to the pin inputs as we could get them.
Yeah, so it's just acting as sort of a little blocker for anything that's very high frequency and very low current that's floating around in the air.
Now, Charles actually invented a circuit that already existed. So, well, I mean, we actually got a comment from a gentleman who said, "What, you didn't realize this thing existed already?" And he said, well, we design from first principles. So a lot of design work we do without doing any research at all. We just do it the way we think is best. And sometimes it's original work or a variation on original work, as in this case. And sometimes we just recreate a circuit that somebody invented 50 years ago.
Well, there's very little that's brand new out there, especially whenever it comes to vacuum tubes. But I'm glad I stumbled on something that works quite well.
So this is really neat. This circuit's got a fancy name. It's called a concertina.
Yeah, a phase splitter.
And it's got a couple of other names, I think. And essentially what Charles did, or what the circuit does, is we have a plate resistor of 5K1 1 watt, and we have a cathode resistor of 5K1 1 watt. And you might think, wait a minute, plate resistors at 1 watt? That sounds really low. And it is, because what's happening here is essentially the vacuum tube is operating basically in neutral, would be a good way to term it.
A mixture of cathode follower and voltage gain at the same time.
All combined in one stage. And it's a brilliant circuit. It doesn't have a lot of applications because it's got no gain, and it's got moderately high output impedance, but that doesn't affect us in the circuit that's coming next. So we've got our signal non-inverted coming on the input. This is the nominal, right? When we take the signal off the plate, it inverts. Okay, so now we have an inverted signal, and when you take the signal off the cathode, it doesn't invert, so it's non-inverting. And because of the way the circuit's balanced, there's no gain and there's basically no loss. But in reality, there's a small loss to the signal.
Yeah, you'll get probably about 90% of it out.
We have coupling capacitors on the output because we've got high voltage present, and we can't have that going to the next stage. And Bob's your uncle, and out we go. Okay, so that's the phase splitter, that's V3. Now the main event. So this really looks confusing, but hang on a second and I'm going to make it look a lot simpler. Okay, this is the main event. This is the preamp circuit, the balanced preamp circuit, and because every channel of a balanced signal has an uninverted and an inverted phase, and you're going to hear other terms too. If you're just getting into balanced preamps or balanced gear, there's also, the old term was hot, which would be the non-inverted, and cold would be in the inverted. In phase and out of phase is another way of describing it. They're all correct. So this is the right channel, and the inverted signal that's coming in is going into a circuit that's essentially identical in every way to the non-inverted. So it's just making it look busy. So what if we did this? And all of a sudden, it's not so complicated anymore. The only thing that creates a lot of components is the fact that we need 4 channels of these. So 4 times this. So in comes our signal. It's non-inverted. We know what a grid stopper is already. We've got a cathode resistor that's bypassed permanently with C9, and that gives us a more efficient gain stage, and it also will make for the lowest possible noise floor, because if there is any noise here, it will actually drain off, most of it will drain off to ground. So our signal arrives on the grid, we take it off the plate, it inverts.
And it gets amplified this time quite a bit.
All of the gain we're going to get is over here. So you can see it. You can see our symbol increases. We use a coupling cap because there's high voltage present. This is a plate resistor, of course. So we arrive at the cathode follower, which is the low impedance circuit. So cathode followers are designed not for gain. They're basically neutral gain-wise, but because you always lose something in a circuit like this, you'll get a little bit less gain than out than went in. Now, our plate resistor is in fact inverted on a cathode follower. It ends up way down here, and we ended up with a cathode resistor And what this does is basically elevate the ground point. So the reference is from here to here. This is a grid leak resistor. And off of this circuit, we get a low impedance output. Low impedance is important because if we don't want losses on the stage we're driving, we want as low an impedance as possible on the output. So technically you could drive another stage from here at high impedance, but you would have to be going into a very high impedance circuit. It would reduce the flexibility of the circuit and probably wouldn't sound nearly as good. Mm-hmm. So one of the things we've noticed, this is the latest iteration of this circuit. We've used it quite a bit in our kits. And one of the things we noticed the most about running the circuit fairly hot is that the bass tightens up. Everything sounds very good as a result of a good cathode follower circuit. But the lowest frequencies, they get snapped to them. And if you're used to muddy bass, this might be a bit of a surprise or a shock.
Yeah, you can actually have detailed low frequencies.
Yep. So off we come with our inverted low impedance signal. We couple and we're out. Now, XLR jacks have an industry standard that is pretty much across the board. And I'll talk a little bit about the exception in a minute. So pin 1 is always ground. Pin 2 is normally uninverted or in phase, and pin 3 is normally inverted or out of phase. There is some vintage equipment that actually swap 2 and 3. I wouldn't worry about it. Most people will never come across that equipment.
Unless you're working with old tape decks.
Yeah,
it probably doesn't matter.
I've got some Atari reel-to-reels that actually aren't that old. They were made in the early 1980s. And the Atari is a Japanese company, and I don't know if all of Japan reversed this, but I've never come across pin 2 and 3 being reversed. So I wouldn't worry about it. So now you can basically see how the whole circuit works. So if we arrive on the input with a non-inverting signal and we end up with a pin 3 inverted signal, then the other side that arrives on the input inverted, it's going to be non-inverted, right? So that's how this whole thing is wired up. So it ends up coming up here and landing on pin 2.
And it also ends up going to the RCA output.
Yeah.
And so that means that this preamp is a non-inverting preamp. The phase that your signal comes in on is also the phase that it will go out on.
Yeah. And the last thing here on the output is you'll see there's 220K resistors, quarter watt. They're a quarter watt because they literally will not have any power on them of significance. But they provide a load. So the cathode follower circuit will always see at least a 220K load, but the next stage most likely will be lower, maybe a 100K input. And as a result, the next stage, perhaps a power amp, will actually be the impedance of this circuit, or that will be the load this circuit sees. It's whatever the lowest impedance in this stretch is, including what it's plugged into, establishes that. But if there was, let's say, a 1 meg input impedance on the monoblock you're plugging into, then this would actually be the load that the circuit would see.
Yeah, well, you actually see them both in parallel, but the lowest one
dominates
it.
Yeah, that's right. So, and I think that's just about it, Charles. We've got a list of compatible tubes here for each of the sockets. And really, even though it looks complicated, it really is not that complicated. And that is one of the secrets to a great sounding balanced preamp, is to keep the signal paths short and keep the circuitry as simple as possible. And of course, to choose great tubes.
Yeah.
Okay, cheers everyone.